On this episode, we discuss the problems with and potential solutions to common Bangkok taxi issues.
So if you've ever found yourself standing in the rain after being refused for the 5th time, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 who recently got told off for drinking Tom Kha Gai through a straw, but being the badass I am, I just kept on drinking.
I like it. That's a merit badge.
That's right.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract 22 years ago, fell in love with paying $10 to get my teeth cleaned, so I never left.
Was it ever really that cheap?
It was pretty cheap. I remember those days. In the States, you can't get any kind of medical care for super cheap. You know, it's high quality care.
It's but $10 to get punched in the face.
That's right. That's about right. And I remember, maybe it might not have been $10, but I remember after being here a year, and I was thinking, oh shit, I'm staying. I got to get my teeth cleaned, and I found some dental clinic on the street. It was cheap, man. It might have been, I think it was about $10 because, I think it was about like 300 baht. I mean, it's obviously more now. So this is a while ago. But I just couldn't believe, I just couldn't believe that I was getting any kind of medical care, anything,
Right, yeah.
A teeth cleaning, you got to go to the dentist, you got to pay. I mean, it's at least, I don't know what, a few $100s in the States.
Right.
So it's for real.
All right. Well, cool. Well.
Okay, we want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about the awesome performance that Jack White gave last week, as well as the not-so-awesome next morning when I woke up with COVID, my experience with some of the best medical care I've ever received after I sliced my finger really badly with a comically huge knife, and the absolute shit show around the World Cup being televised in Thailand, which will only happen if anyone, pays FIFA around 1.6 billion baht. To learn how to become a patron, click the support button at the top of our website.
Man, I'd love to see one of those graphs that starts out really thick and then it's like splinters as you see where the money is distributed and where it goes and gets smaller and smaller as it goes along.
Right.
Like I know it's not one of those little splinters is definitely not going to end up in my pocket.
That's right.
All right. And as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to say hi, head to BangkokPodcast.com and click the little microphone button on the bottom right to leave us a voicemail that we'll play on the show. And before we get into it, we want to remind everyone that we are having our year-end meetup on December 10th at Ban Rim Nam in Talat Noi. We'll have some pizza there. Everyone got to get their own drinks, but we're going to provide the food at least at the beginning for the early risers who show up early.
Sure.
And one of the cool things about Ban Rim Nam is its location deep in Talat Noi. If you've never been there, but it's a bit hard to find if you don't know the place. So to make things easier, we'll be partnering with last week's guest, Move Me, who will have one of their electric tuk-tuks waiting at exit 1 of Hualampong MRT station to shuttle people to Ban Rim Nam. Still working on a little fine-tuned details and stuff like that, but more details when we have them. We'll put them on our Facebook page. But just remember, Ban Rim Nam, December 10th, Bangkok Podcast Meetup. So it'll be fun.
So be there for sure. Hey, I gotta say this today. As a matter of fact, I saw. I'm sure I'd seen them before, but it never registered. But today I actually saw a Move Me tuk-tuk, and they don't make any noise. I can confirm that.
Yeah. It's like Santa's elves or something. You don't notice them until you see one, and then they're everywhere.
That's right.
Really
That's
cool.
right. Yeah,
they're really cool. All right. Well, on this episode, we are going to go all in on taxis in Bangkok. Now, Ed and I have argued about this for years. Ed is very pro-taxi, and I'm a little bit less so. But still, taxis in Bangkok are one of the main systems that keep it functioning. When they work well, they are fantastic, but when they don't, you can literally have your whole day or night ruined. Now, the biggest problem is that taxis are famous for their unwillingness to take people where they need to go, instead trying to find the one gullible fool who will pay 200 baht for a ride that would cost 50 baht on the meter. But there are a host of other issues as well. But Ed, who spends a lot of time in taxis, has put a ton of thought into how to make the whole system better for everyone, riders and drivers alike. So that's what we're going to be talking to tonight. Now, Ed, this show is actually based on a season 2 bonus show that we did way back in the day. And when we recorded that, I was amazed at some of the amazing solutions that you had that seem so simple but are just not obvious. So we're going to get back into those again and explore those in a bit more detail. And of course, this all comes on the heels of the announcement that taxis are going to be making a little bit more on their fares in coming months.
That's right.
So yeah, man, what do you have to say about taxis?
Well, I love this topic, and it brings back my memories of when I first started on the podcast, because for some reason at that time I was obsessed with taxis who would not take me where I wanted to go. So this is a classic Bangkok problem. I'm definitely not the only one who it drives crazy, but for some reason, right when I started being a co-host, I was just obsessed with this issue. So you and I ended up talking about it a lot, mostly on the bonus show. And just to clarify a couple of things. So I think overall, the taxi experience is pretty good in Bangkok. I think I usually would give them like a grade of like B or B plus, especially if you factor in the low cost. Now your grade would probably be lower on average.
Yeah, maybe a B minus or a C.
Yeah, but you and I are definitely in agreement that the most annoying thing in the world is when a taxi driver will not take you where you want to go, even though under current Thai law, they are required to do that. So the current Thai law says taxi drivers cannot refuse riders, but they do regularly, especially if it's at night, if you're near any kind of tourist area, if it's raining. Basically, if there's any possible excuse they can give, then they will just say no. And it's technically against the law. So in my opinion, other than big abstract issues like the nature of the government and things like that, I really think that taxi drivers not taking you where you want to go, I think it's number one most annoying thing about living in Bangkok. I honestly think it's number one. And we've had whole shows about different annoyances and things that drive us crazy, but no one likes this. Like, and you might think, oh, this is just a foreigner thing, but it's not. Thai people complain about it all the time. The taxis won't take them where they want to go. Foreigners complain about it. Everybody hates it. And so years ago, I brainstormed, but I mean, you helped out, Craig. You brainstormed as well. We tried to brainstorm possible solutions to this, but it kind of fell by the wayside because during COVID, the demand for taxis went down so much that the taxis became nicer, and they needed us, man. They needed us, and so the problem went away.
It's one of those free market solutions, right? They needed us more than we needed them.
That's right, and it was great. So for almost 3 years now, you hardly ever got refused. But now that the economy's come back, tourists have come back, we're back to the old games, and it's been driving me crazy, man. And you and I have discussed this many times. We have psychological strategies. Like one of my psychological strategies is I just decide ahead of time it's gonna take 5 taxis. I just decide it's gonna take 5 because it usually takes 2, 3, or 4, and so then just psychologically I feel like I won.
I do that. When you told me that the first time, I was like, that's genius. And it's like you're tricking yourself into not losing your mind. So you're like, this is 1 of 5. He's going to say no.
This is number 1.
This is number 2. He's going to say no. This is number 3. He's going to say no. Oh, he said yes. Fantastic.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So, but that's more of a Zen approach. But I actually have some legitimate possible solutions to solve this problem for good.
All right.
That I want to throw out there. Now, these are kind of based on the ideas I had a few years ago, but I'm curious what you think about them now. And things have changed a little bit. I think there's a little more competition, like such as Move Me and Grab and things like that. So that might have changed things. So my first thing I want to mention is I want to throw this out there just because I've heard more than one person mention this. And this is actually something that I don't think would work, but I want to mention it first.
Okay.
I've got a buddy who is a free market evangelist type. He just really believes in the market. And he's not the only one who suggested this. But I have heard people honestly think the solution to the taxi problem is to get rid of the meters completely and just negotiate every fare all the time.
Really?
So there's no base price. It's just you negotiate every fare. Now,
Wow.
the first problem with this would be logistical, having to walk around and talk to taxis. But the bottom line is you could potentially minimize that with smartphones. In other words, you could just, a little bit like Grab, but you could propose a price and a taxi could accept or not accept, or taxis within, let's say, 300 meters. So, you get on your phone, taxis within 300 meters, you say, I want to go to En Route, I'll pay 200 baht. And then
Right.
a taxi guy says, I'll take it. So this is kind of the supposed free market solution. So my buddy, God love him, he's a free market evangelist. So he wants to say no meters, no minimum fares, no set distances. It's pure negotiation for every ride. So I've got an opinion about this, but Greg, what do you think about that? Are you a free market guy?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea, but I think there's already an app like that. I'm not sure whether it's Bolt or something else where it works just like that. You propose where you're going to go and how much you want to pay to get there, and anyone in the network who's a member of the app who wants to take that deal will answer yes, and they'll come and get you. I'm not sure how it works. I've never used it before, but it's an okay solution.
Interesting. I think for this solution to work, the idea is, the government would say this is just how all taxis work. So basically it's just a free market. It's just a negotiated thing. So you think this has potential? You think it could possibly work?
Yeah, but it would. I think it would put the onus on the public to become like everyone's got to be a meter. So I've got to go from Siloam to Thonburi every day. I know how much that is. But one day I've got to go to a dinner at a friend's house and he lives up in Ramkhamhaeng. I don't know. Is it 400 baht? Is it 200 baht? Is it 100 baht? So you still might get people wildly overpaying just because they don't know. And so it becomes their fault that they're not a human taxi meter. So I think that might get a bit controversial.
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting idea, and I'm all for experiments. So like you said, if there's an Oreo service doing this, I'm all for experimenting with this kind of thing. But I really don't think it would work. There's a reason why buses have fixed prices. The bottom line is the free market is not good at things where we need a guarantee, where we need something to be available and we need a price that is predictable. The market is not good at that. If it was negotiating for everything, the bottom line is it would be easy for taxis to gouge. So after a concert, like after Mung Tong Tani, when there's 1,000 people looking for a cab, then the cab drivers are just going to say 3,000 baht, like to get or you can wait 4 hours. And I know market people will say, well, no, another cab driver will break that down. But the bottom line is wherever the market price settles, it could be a very high price in that situation. And I think the bottom line is for certain things, like I would include healthcare in this category of things. I think in general, people don't want to be subject to variations in market price. They want predictability and they want certainty. And that's why public transportation has set rates, whether it's the MRT, and I think people essentially want taxis to be like that. So I'll just throw that out there. I think it's a very interesting debate to be had, and I'm all for I'm all for some company trying this, and if it works, it works. I will support it. But I'm pretty skeptical about this kind of thing because I think that in certain circumstances, what we need is like predictability and reliability, and I don't think the market provides that in this case. Okay, so let's just scratch that one off the list. So here's another proposal. Okay. Another proposal is simply to have certain cabs which are designated as allowing to refuse fares, and then other taxis that are designated as they're not allowed to refuse fares. But have an increased cost or base price for the ones that are not allowed to refuse fares. So whether you use some type of color coding system, so there's a certain flag on the taxi which indicates to you they are allowed to refuse fares,
right.
but you know the meter is cheaper for that one.
Okay,
do you understand?
Yeah,
So you see the taxi, you see it's got the green light. You're like, okay, this guy can refuse, but it's cheaper. And then the other guy's got the purple light. So if you flag that guy down, he's got to take you. But then, because that guy cannot refuse fares because he's stuck and he's got to agree to go, then the advantage for him is that maybe his starting thing is 10 baht more or the rate increases. So essentially you have two classes of taxis. Now you would still have to enforce this, so you would, but we're assuming in this case that it actually is enforced. So
right.
What do you think? So imagine if you could look out at taxis and you could tell whether they had the right to refuse you or not. What would you do? Would you just say, I'm always going to go with the one that has to say yes? Is that what you would do?
Yeah, well, I think actually this system already exists. There already is a fleet of taxis that are legally not allowed to refuse you, and that is all taxis. Like you mentioned, it is the law. And there's a class of taxis that cost a little bit more that almost never refuse you, and that's Grab. So
I still don't know. So no, my point is, okay, I know. I know they're already supposed to take you, but the bottom line is there's no one now who's officially allowed to refuse. I'm talking about creating a class where they are allowed to refuse you, and that. So they're not breaking the law. So it's whatever the purple flagged ones, they're allowed to refuse. But the idea is that those taxes would be cheaper. So it's not a negotiated fare. It's still a rate.
Right.
So, I want to create an incentive situation because the bottom line is right now taxi drivers, and I want to respect their reasons why they want to refuse. Like these guys don't make a lot of money. So I'm trying to come up with this. I'm trying, I'm a win-win guy, Greg. I'm trying to come up with I'm not a win-lose guy. Like I'm on the side of the taxi drivers. I want something that works for them. So what I'm saying is that if taxi drivers want to refuse, then they have to accept the slower rate, and if the taxi driver has a choice, I can be this type of taxi or that type of taxi. What do you think? I think that's reasonable.
Interesting. I think it bears further debate, but there's nothing stopping the more expensive taxis that are not supposed to refuse you from refusing you. It's raining. Oh, it's a shame.
Right.
Bummer for you.
No, so you would need, of course. Yeah. No, we would need proper enforcement for sure. Yeah. To be honest, that really should be a potential solution, even without the special classes. Really, if the Thai police just enforce the law, or whoever the taxi association is, the bottom line is every time a taxi refuses a fare, you should be able to take a picture of the guy and his license and report him. So I guess that is another solution, is just enforce the current law. And it does happen occasionally. Like I think you and I, yeah, did you and I talk about this? But there was a viral story in Bangkok a couple months ago because I believe it was a Thai guy or a Thai couple, they got refused by 15 taxis in a row.
Really? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so they were on a bad run. They got refused by like 15, and they
documented
Ed's
rule doesn't apply here.
That's right. So they started to document it, and then they posted it like on Twitter or wherever they did, or on a Thai message board, and it blew up, and the Thai citizenry was exploding. And in that case, because I think they had videos of the drivers saying no, and the taxi authority fined each driver 1,500 baht or something like that for refusing.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So again, well, it's Greg's rule of Thailand that only after embarrassment does the government actually do anything.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess solution number one. So we have our free market thing, which we're going to cross off the list. Solution number two would be just enforce the current law and just make the current drivers, punish them in some way. But the bottom line is I don't think that's going to happen. Let's be honest. Right. I don't think that's going to happen.
That would be a pretty big sea change to enact.
Yeah. The third solution is my two-tiered thing, where you let the taxi drivers decide what kind of taxi you want to be, but then you also would have to enforce it. So if you can't enforce it, then obviously it's in trouble. But create 2 categories and let them choose what kind of taxi they want to be. If they want the freedom to choose riders, that's fine. But then they have a certain rate. But then other guys who say, nope, I'll accept everyone, then you give them the advantage. So I'm trying to give taxi drivers a choice that they'd be happy with. And so if they opt in, then the compliance might be better.
This is good. I like it. It's good that you're doing this because it's easy to complain, but everyone complains and not a lot of people offer possible solutions. You're offering possible solutions.
It's pretty hard. I'm trying here. And okay, so here's solution number 4. As most people know, or most people in Bangkok know, the most common excuse why they won't take you, sometimes they're just rude and they say no. But a lot of times you get guys who seem nice and they seem reasonable, but they say, I'm at the end of my shift. My home is in this direction, and you're asking me to go in the opposite way, so I can't do it. So they'll say like a song road, like I'm delivering my car. They'll say something like that, or they're saying like kapan, so that's their excuse, that they're at the end of their shift, and your destination is not the direction they want to go, which of course is reasonable in a city like Bangkok with bad traffic. So, if this guy's had a long shift and he's trying to get home to his wife and kids, and you want him to go in the opposite direction, and then he's got to fight traffic to get back. Yeah, I sympathize. That's what I'm saying.
I get that. It's like your boss coming in 10 minutes before your shift ends and dropping a pile of papers on your desk saying, "Finish those tonight."
That's right. So the bottom line is anytime I get refused for any reason, I find it extremely annoying. But I am trying to see it from their perspective, right? Because I'm a win-win guy, right?
Win-win guy.
I'm trying. And so here's my, I think I'm on solution number 4, is for all taxis, they have the light indicating, when they're free, right? Basically, you just have another color for the last hour of their shift. That's it. Right. And they're allowed to refuse fares during the last hour of their shift. That's it. So you can look at the color. It's a little bit like my other solution, but it's not. This would apply to all taxis. And again, you would have to be able to enforce it just like any other rule. But in the last hour of their shift, it either automatically changes or they change it. And now you can see, okay, this guy's at the end of his shift, and now you know that they have the right to refuse.
Interesting. So normally taxis, for those that don't know, I think most people would know, but normally taxis in the corner of their windshield, they have a red or green, depending on the taxi, little thing, and in Thai it says wang, which means available.
Wang, which means free, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if it's on, that means it's free, and if it's off, it means someone's taking the taxi. But so say it's like blue. So if you see, if someone on the side of the road sees a taxi with a blue light, they think like they can decide like, well, my trip is only real short. I'll try to flag him. Or
that's right.
My trip is on the other side of town. I'm not even going to try with him because he's got a short amount of time left.
That's right.
It also flips around, and the taxi can just be free to say, I'm sorry, I've only got 20 minutes left. So no.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I actually of all the solutions, I actually favor this one because I think it's pretty simple. Like I think doing the 2-tiered one and having them opt in and opt out, it's doable. But I think it would be like a larger thing. I think this idea of just the last hour, kind of like the last hour rule, and then having some way for them to indicate it's the last hour. It doesn't even necessarily even have to be changing the color of the light. It could just be like a new flag, like something that clips on the taxi, and they pull a little lever, and this little flag goes up, and it's like, this is the last hour flag.
Probably easier to have an LED light. I could just imagine like a little, like a ka-chunk, and this thing flips up on top of the car.
Well, you know what I mean. Just some way that can, because there's a lot of psychology involved in this, and if you could see that the cab has the right to refuse, it makes it much less painful for you because you could wave him past, as in, I'm not even going to try because your flag's up because you're on the last hour. And as you pointed out, a lot depends on the distance of your ride. Right. So if you saw the guy had his flag up, you could just wave the guy on. And then it's just much less painful. Like listeners out there, I know a lot of you guys have been through this, but if you're contemplating a visit to Thailand, or if you're just educating yourself, it is extremely frustrating when you need to get somewhere or want to get somewhere, and the taxis are supposed to accept everyone, and then they just pull over and roll down their window.
Oh, hate that.
And you just want to like scream at them as soon as they roll down the window. You just want to like throw a brick at them,
Slacker.
Yeah, but some, the thing is, the bottom line, when they roll their window down, sometimes they say yes. So it's, so you end up in this catch-22 where it's annoying, but you want to ask, and then they say no, and then you just wave them on, and then it's next one and next one and next one. So if you just knew ahead of time whether they had the right to refuse or not, then it psychologically, I think, would be much easier to deal with.
I like this solution a lot too, because it also helps reduce cheating. So a taxi driver could just turn on the blue light and be like, ha ha ha, like now I can refuse anyone. But
right.
He's also cutting out the pedestrians on the side of the road who see him and go, oh, I'm not even going to bother with him. So
that's right.
Like he's purposely cutting out some of his potential fares.
That's right.
Which might hurt his bottom line. So it prevents him from cheating.
That's right. And, there's so many issues involved in this. And I think this is an interesting debate. It does have to do back to this whole free market thing and giving people options and choices. But I like this rule because eventually I think both the customer and the driver will kind of learn what the best thing is. I think if you had this, let's say, flag or blue light, I think the tractor drivers would learn whether or not it really was to their benefit. Because I think the way things are now, a lot of these drivers who are refusing fares, they might be making more money because of that, but they might not be. Obviously, they think they are because they're doing it. And a lot of them also are going off meter, which is a slightly different, problem. There's many issues related to taxis. But I'm not sure anyone really knows if this is really better for them. Like, they think it's better for them to refuse, but I'm not sure it necessarily really is. I mean, I think if they were just accepting ride after ride after ride after ride, which is how it is in the States, which is how it is most in the world. Like, they pull up, you get in, where to, sir, and that's it. So they're just getting ride after ride after ride after ride after ride. Whereas in Bangkok, a lot of these drivers are just picking and choosing. I'm not sure it really benefits them. I mean, they think it benefits them, but I'm not sure I believe it.
Well, especially with gas prices, what they are now, like, they'd rather drive around in a circle for half an hour than to take 5 fares that might add up to more than they're burning in gas anyway. So,
right. But the bottom line is, no matter any of these solutions, as you pointed out at the start of the show, they do require some actual enforcement by somebody. So there would have to be some penalty for someone breaking the rules, and I don't know what that would be. I mean, I think in general, I rarely do it. It's probably a good idea, like, especially I think if you're a woman or it's at night, it's probably a good idea before you get into a taxi to take a picture of the taxi or the license plate, But something like that, like where if everyone in Bangkok, both Thai and foreign, if they immediately took a picture of a taxi that refused a fare and then reported it, if we just consistently reported it over and over again to the taxi authority, then that might encourage them to start fining these drivers. I don't know. So, I mean, maybe we don't have to change any rules. Maybe we just have to enforce them. But I just don't. Yeah. It's just like I'm pretty cynical on that. After I've been here 20 years, I know how enforcement works here, and so that's why I'm looking for other solutions besides just enforce the law.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think enforcement would probably, across the board, non-prejudiced enforcement of laws would probably get rid of a lot of the problems in a lot of the places in the world. So, I mean, that's my theory, but. It would certainly help here, but again, who's going to do it? They got extra cops to do that. They're going to hire a bunch of new people.
I'm with you.
And like you said, it would require sort of more of a wholesale rebooting of certain segments of the structures of Thai society, which
for sure
ain't easy.
Well, listeners out there, if any of you are independently wealthy, you can fund the Bangkok Podcast nonprofit organization, our non-governmental, our NGO. And our NGO that is gonna try to improve life in Thailand, and one of our first projects will be solving the taxi problem. So if you're willing to fund us, Greg and I, we've got answers, we've got solutions. We're win-win guys, and wouldn't that be great if the Bangkok Podcast, if we solved this problem? we would become even greater legends than we are already. Because this problem embitters everyone. It embitters Thai people and embitters foreigners. Everyone hates that taxis can refuse fares.
Yeah.
So if Greg and I could solve this, we'd become mega legends.
And you'd think it would be a bigger deal too, because taxis are often the first point of contact that most tourists have, whether they're coming out of their airport or out of their hotel in the morning. And you start your day off with a crappy experience with an angry taxi driver. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And hey, one last one before we go. I remember in the previous show that we did this, you mentioned something about another method to help enforcement and feedback from customers, and that was something to do with a QR code.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think this is very doable, especially since QR codes now are very common.
Yeah.
If basically every cab ride you took, there was a QR code connected to that cab, then you could give feedback on every single ride and really every single drive. So, for example, imagine if the QR code was on the side of the taxi, and when he pulls up, you scan it. Right there, boom. So you scan it right there, and then he tries to negotiate with you, and then boom, you can give a negative review immediately, like this guy rejected me.
Oh,
so
interesting.
So it would track the information, and then basically when a cab comes up and you scan that QR, you see the reviews from the past.
Ooh, so like an Uber thing, right?
Yeah, so kind of very quickly you could see that, this is the kind of guy who refuses fares. So again, you would have to make sure the driver was the same for the car. And as most people live in Bangkok know, a lot of times the picture of the guy is not the same as the driver, and the license is from his cousin. But the bottom line is I think QR codes on the side of the taxi could help enforcement.
Yeah, and I also remember we talked about having a QR code on a receipt too. Like every ride you get a receipt with a QR code on it, like maybe one QR code for a good ride, one QR code for a bad ride, just in case you didn't get time to scan the door or the window or whatever when you were outside the cab or something like that. So that might help too. But
right, I mean, the bottom line is there's no record keeping, so there's no history, there's no knowledge that builds up about any particular cab driver.
Right.
So it's not like there's no Amazon customer reviews of cab drivers. So some type of review system might help with enforcement, I think.
Right. Well, man, I think those are all great ideas. They're I don't think they'd be simple to implement, but they'd be doable. And they might not work perfectly the first time, but like with a lot of things in Thailand, things are often never perfect when they're launched. It takes a while to get there. But yeah, man, I think a lot of these would go a long way to making taxis more reliable, more respectable, and giving more pride to the industry.
So. Now that we just threw this out there, I'm very curious among our listeners what type of solutions they have. And I know we got some free market people out there. We got some regulators out there. So I'm open to all these ideas, and I really think this should be a recurring thing. We should do a taxi show like once a year. Honestly, I think I average about 2 cab rides a day.
Wow.
You
are a glutton for punishment.
Something like that. So I mean, I think I've taken more than 10,000 cab rides without exaggeration. And I don't like to drive in the city, so that's never going to change. So man, if we could solve this problem, we would make our mark on Bangkok.
People be wearing like a little patron saint of taxis. It'll be like a little thing on the dashboard, and it'd be your picture.
That's great.
A little Ed sitting cross-legged on a pedestal or something.
So funny.
Oh, that's good. Good ones, man. Good ones. All right. So one of the new segments we want to try in this new season is something called Would You Rather, where one of us picks 2 contrasting situations tied to Thailand to debate and choose which one we'd prefer. So this week, Ed, it's up to you.
Yeah, I got a very simple question for you. Would you rather choose the healthcare system in Canada or the healthcare system in Thailand? And that's including all factors. So with no narrow restrictions, I mean, you could just choose one or the other. And, if you choose the Canadian one, you deal with Canadian costs and regulations and wait times. So all factors considered. Now, for me, I've got my answer comparing. I'm going to choose between the U.S. system and the Thai system. And, patrons, if you were at the bonus show, you probably know which way I'm going to lean. But Greg, what do you think? So you can only choose one medical system, let's say for the rest of your life, you get the Canadian system or you get the Thai system, which one are you going to pick?
This is a good question. And it's really difficult because when I left Canada, I was 26 and I haven't been back.
Right.
So when you're
Right.
26 years old, I didn't have insurance. I didn't know how the medical system worked. I didn't care. I was 26. I'm invincible.
Right. Yeah, you don't need medical care that much.
Yeah, that's right. I did have a couple of like rollerblading accidents and stuff where I needed some pretty good care. But man, yeah, that's a difficult one. Oh, really good question. Damn. But from what I've heard from people who live in Canada, from my parents and friends, Canada's, socialist paradise of healthcare is great. It doesn't cost anything, but the wait times are often pretty turn-offable. They're not great.
Right.
And sometimes you have to wait to see a specialist or you got to see your doctor, and you're sort of restricted by those.
So would you rather pay for the care in Thailand, which is not free, but it's not that expensive, in order to see someone more quickly, is what you're saying?
There's a lot of what ifs here too, because because me personally, as a foreigner here with a decent job, I can pay a little bit extra and get really good care anywhere I want. But if you don't have those resources, then you're kind of screwed. So, for you, for you personally, if you could just pick one system or the other, Thailand.
What would it be?
Thailand.
Yeah. Interesting.
Man, I remember a few years ago I had some problems with my back and it was really hurting me and I wasn't sure what was wrong. So I went into the doctor and he did some tests and he said, we need to get you into an MRI. And I was like, oh, no, okay. And he goes, can you go right now? And I said, actually, I'm going to meet my friends for a movie in about 2 hours. Can I go tomorrow? And he said, yeah, sure. Come on back tomorrow. Contrast that with my parents. My mom had to get an MRI and she had to wait for like 4 months to get a slot.
Right.
So
now you did have to pay for that MRI, but you're right. Or
yes,
you had insurance. But someone had to pay for it, right?
Yeah. But when it comes down to a medical problem, I think a lot of people would probably choose speed over cost.
Right.
Man, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm surprised we've never really talked about this before or stated it so clearly. That's the value of this would you rather segment.
Yeah.
It makes things black or white, like kind of binary. But like you, it's a very difficult choice for me to choose between the U.S. and Thailand. They're drastically different. And I think the care in the U.S. in general is better, especially any type of high-end care. So, if I had a serious medical problem, I would much rather be in the U.S. than to be in Thailand. I just think any type of surgery or anything like that. But that's the question, though. Like, how likely is that going to happen in your life that you're going to need a triple bypass? Like, if I need a triple bypass, I want to be in the States. Period. But that's a low percentage thing, and you can get a triple bypass in Thailand. So to me, it's a tough call.
Yeah.
But in my case, I'm a lefty, and I really think government provided healthcare, supported by tax dollars, is better. And so I think I really would. I find it, even though that's true, I find it hard to say this, but I think I would choose the Thai. I think I would choose the Thai system as well.
Really?
Just because I think I would, because it's just so easy. On the bonus show today, I just talked about, I cut my finger and I just walked into a clinic and just got immediate care, had 5 people helping me out. The total cost was like $30. And in the U.S., it would have involved insurance and delays. And the U.S. system is so messed up, even though I think the quality of care is better in the States, especially for anything that's sophisticated. But the bottom line is the quality in Thailand is good. It's just in the U.S. it's great, but here the quality is actually good, and most likely, fingers crossed, I won't need some super sophisticated kind of surgery in my life.
Interesting.
Right?
So we both choose.
And so, I feel kind of weird saying this, but I think I would choose the Thai medical system. I think it's just better for most people most of the time.
Right. I think also that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of Thais who would choose the Canadian or American system any day over the Thai one. So it doesn't, it's not a blanket statement, but for us personally, I think that's interesting.
It's just so convenient and it's so much less expensive that it's just that affects your quality of life. In the US, going to see a doctor is just stressful because it involves insurance and co-payments, and it's just expensive, And I mean, you get really good care, but most of the time in Thailand, you're getting care that is also really good or good enough for whatever the sickness you have.
Right.
I think once you start going up into sophisticated problems, things might start to change. But those are low percentage things. So I'm going to go. I think I'm also going to go. I'm going to go Thai healthcare.
That's a good question, man. There's a lot of variables there, but interesting.
For sure. All right. A final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
That's right. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show, or contact me on Twitter where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you back here next week.
For sure.
Sound all right. You feel okay, but just coughing a little bit?
Yeah. I'm good.
Nice.
All good, man. When you've been sick for a few days and then you wake up and you just you have this kind of clear, like light feeling, and you're like, oh, I'm not sick. Like you just feel empowered.
Like you don't know what you were missing, and until it was taken away from you, and then you wake up, you're like, wow.
You're like, wow, what is this? Oh, I feel normal.
It's health.
Right.
All right.